Morning, everyone.
Hey.
Arthur and Stefan, are you guys both in France?
Uh,
But I'm in France. I don't know if it's
yeah, I'm in France as well.
Damn. He's doing the late nights.
Are you in France too? No.
No, I'm in San Francisco.
Right.
But yeah, I'm from France. So, from Bordeaux.
Right.
nice.
Are you going to travel for KubeCon?
Yeah.
Nice.
Hopefully. Let's see.
Right. It's 3 minutes past. Let's get started. Welcome everybody to the October 1st, 2024 SIG Multicluster call. Today on the agenda, we have Arthur on first.
Yeah. So my first topic was about the multi-cluster coordinates plugin. I was wondering who else does use it. I know that Submariner doesn't.
Yeah.
Because I'm planning to use it in Cilium. And I was maybe wondering about like simplifying its installation and stuff like that. And I was wondering if I was the only one using it, or if I could like talk to some people that are already using it or not. But I guess maybe I'm the only one. I know it's bootstrapped by AWS, but I don't think it's very active. Okay, so sounds like I'm the only one.
Well, yeah. Well, we looked at it. Well, it's not as old as Submariner, so we had our own CoreDNS plugin by the time this came up, but we looked at it, and there were a couple of missing features for our use case around locality, but it's not really relevant. So I think, yeah, I think it would be useful to get it working. And Laura, you had people working on it.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull up a thing, but the AKS group worked on it. Sorry, no, the Amazon EKS group worked the most on it, and their implementation uses it. I'm trying to find the reference to that for you.
Yeah, I saw the AWS working on it, but I think they are not very active lately on this topic, right?
Yeah, definitely not active on it lately. They have a sorry, I can't like search and talk at the same time, but they have a MCS controller that's built on top of I can't remember the name of the Amazon AWS product of right now off the top of my head. And then they worked on it basically to get it to work with that thing at that time, which at this point is probably like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. And that was the last time there was any major updates on it that I am aware of. And I think
Okay.
but
Well,
yeah, let me get the link for you too and send it to you. And
no, but
then-
I don't have it right now, but I did get on it.
Cool.
But it's like, as far as I know, it's fully confirmed. It was just because like you have to rebuild core DNS and stuff like that. So my final goal is to make it like easy for user to opt into this.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, I will try to figure it out. Maybe I will ask the core DNS maintainer if it would be possible to merge in tree or stuff like that. Maybe once we are in beta v1 or stuff like that. I will check.
And one other thing that I think there's kind of like two, sorry, I'm kind of like remembering it hazily from before, but I think there's kind of two parts to that question. One is that there's like what's actually entry for core DNS, and then there's what plugins are like already loaded in the build of core DNS.
Yep.
I think even the Kubernetes DNS plugin is not like core entry, like even for regular single cluster DNS. It's not entry for core DNS, but it's a plugin, but that is built with.
You have
Okay,
plugin compiled in and enabled, and it's not compiled in, not enabled, and Kubernetes is compiled in, not enabled.
Okay, totally. Sorry if you said that when you first opened the topic, but I was kind of not totally paying attention. But yeah, so yeah, I think that's totally a valid question of can we get that compiled in the same way that the Kubernetes DNS plugin is compiled and easy to use. So yeah, I think that's totally valid.
Yeah, well, I guess it would be more up to core DNS maintainer, right? So I will probably try to open an issue and try to chat with them. Okay.
John, you've had your hand up for a while.
Yeah, I was just going to point out that the EDE tests in the MCS API repo also like rebuild and configure core DNS with that plugin, and it seems to work at least in the EDE tests. So I just threw a link in chat to kind of the script that bootstraps the EDE test kind clusters in case that's helpful.
Yeah, well, actually, it's already helpful because I kind of stole some of your script to write the Cilium documentation. But, yeah. Yeah, I will try to chat with core DNS maintainers and we'll see what they want. So should I go on my next topic, maybe?
Yeah.
Okay, so so it's a bit a follow-up from last meeting. It was, well, let me share my screen. So I had this PR open about condition because in the cap, it was still referencing the old conditions. And also at last meeting, I was kind of pushing to have an extra info, which is whether or not the local service is involved in the conflict, so that it might be easier for admin to spot what is going on. So there is two issues that I discussed with Tom, which is some minor dev. I'm not sure if he's on this call. So the first thing is that in the previous condition, the reason field was kind of optional, and now with the upstream SIG, it's mandatory to have something. So it's kind of weird right now, and Tom probably not. Okay, his command is not on the div, but this is kind of a bit weird because we have the type and I duplicate the reason So I'm looking kind of feedback about that. And the second thing is how we actually encode the fact that there is a local conflict, that like the service is directly involved with the conflict or not, or if he's agreeing with the oldest service. Yeah, well, so Mike said already volunteer, but I'm welcoming anyone, and most of all, people that are experienced about designing APIs around conditions and stuff like that. And I don't know if you have a synchronous remark or not, but else we can go on the next topic if you don't. So that's it.
All right, thanks. Yeah, and Mike said in the chat that he could help review. I imagine others will take a look as well. Next one is Quentin.
Hey, so do you want me to project the cap? I wanted to talk about Ryan's cap. I don't see him here, but at least Mike, I think, is here commenting on the PR. So Mike's is still on the credentials. The credentials cap, and my comments right now are around like what. Like the consumer to me doesn't seem too defined, and I'm a little scared we're starting with the end, really. I don't know if you see my screen.
Yeah, we can see it.
Cool. So we're having this chart, right, with credentials, and each credential is for a single consumer, but it's like, I understand, like for QAdmin and Argo, we'd get different credentials. We want to build credentials for them. That's great. Like, where is that list defined, and could we maybe do a slightly better job? But it's like, how defining this list, where should this list exist? When do you break it down? How do you protect that list? Or what is, like, is there a source of truth, or is there, I'm just not understanding really where, like, how would one really define this? Because it's not like you define the consumer here and then some system brings it up. It's like, I think Ryan showed like off token requests or something like that before, and I'm wondering if that should go kind of the same time and be discussed as a group, or if we can just go forward with this. It's like that's the part of this PR. That's why I've been like going a little back and forth. I'm like, I'm not sure how it's used, and is the story okay for this thing, and does this thing make sense in that whole story? Because it seems, a little isolated here.
I also reviewed that PR, and I had a number of similar questions. I asked some of those questions by leaving comments. I don't think Ryan got back to me, or maybe very recently he did, and I haven't seen it. But yeah, there are similar concerns that I had as well. Oh, he very recently replied, I guess an hour ago or so, right?
Yeah, I'm going through Mike's replies. Mike, do you want to comment on it maybe? 'Cause, I mean, you just replied. I haven't gone through your responses just yet.
Yeah, I'm also, I went through your points, and they all make sense. So regarding this comment, it's a little bit more concrete, I think. So most of it, I think, is up to the provider and the consumer in this particular case, because we really have no way of sort of enforcing it at the API level, right? So I think at most we can just do the sort of recommendation, and I expect the consumer of the cluster profile in this credential section to be watching for the changes to those secrets anyways. So they will be, in sync of the changes, and then they'll refresh it. They'll reload them when it's needed. But regarding going one by one, the first one must exist before being referred to the cluster profile. Yes, so this one's a bit tricky. they need to exist, and then it needs to continue to exist.
Right.
So it's not just at the creation of the cluster profile. So this is why I'm wondering, hey, maybe do we need to provide a status here to make sure that, hey, those credentials are available, or do we leave it to the consumer to validate, hey, that the credit is there or not? I actually don't know the answer, because if we do a status field in a status condition, do we say all the credentials are available, or do we go one by one and which is not available, which is available? It might make it hard for the consumer to use as well.
Right.
So please, yeah, if anyone have some good suggestion, please continue to expand on the first one specifically. And then the second point is it's regarding cleanup when we delete the cluster profile. And I mean, this is another tricky part as well, because if the secret is used by other other parties, we can't just delete it as well. So we might need to introduce some kind of field, like if we want to orphan it or clean it up or not. At least at the API level, it'll be quite clear to what is the provider gonna do with this credential when the cluster profile gets deleted. If it's orphaned, we obviously leave it alone. If not, we can clean it up. And then the third point is credential rotation. Yes, the credential should be rotated, but I mean, it's not, we'll say that in the CAP, we'll say that in the API, but it's not something the job of this API, I feel like, to do the rotation, because if we do that, then go ahead.
No, I'm saying, yeah, you're right. It's not the job of the API to do the rotation, but the API needs to be allowing the rotation, I guess.
Right. Yes. So I will go and add and edit to, yes, the API should allow for the rotation to happen. And then
that means potentially the consumer needs to know it's been rotated, or like the consumer needs a guidance on how to consume it, in the sense, if it was rotated, how do they know?
Right.
Isn't the usual pattern just to rotate the secrets?
And is that enough?
Is that different from the question that was earlier asked about how does the consumer know about the status anyway?
Yeah, I feel like status is maybe the right answer here, because like you could, like, your controller implementation or whatever might be watching the secrets like that are referenced from the config. You could also, like, as a consumer though, watch the status and do something like a last rotated timestamp or something like that, and when that status changes, that's what you can watch for, maybe.
Is
know.
there,
Go ahead.
yeah, I feel like part of answering this question is also about how much does the cluster profile API depend on the effectively secret API or not, which has some of these features.
Does secret rotation automatically, like, do consumers of secrets, sorry, I haven't done that in a while, like they automatically reload and they detect a secret rotation?
Yeah,
Like,
if they're mounted as volume mounts, yeah, they get updated automatically.
But the secret won't be mounted as a secret, though. Actually, I'm realizing that, because
Probably
very
not.
likely you're already running, right? So they'll be pulling the secret dynamically, I think. Yeah.
Well, if they're using an informer, then they would naturally get informed.
Right. So they would watch the secret for the informer update. Okay. Watch the secret and get the informer update. And
that might work then. Yeah, that might work. If we're just relying on that API, that might work.
Cool. I think for that, I mean, at least for that, that would work. It'd be nice to mention it. Just be sure of that, yeah. And we should ultimately have a library for that, maybe. Curious how
Can
many
you scroll
people-
back up to the questions?
Yes.
Thanks.
That was I think on credentials. Be nice to. So ultimately I wanted a little bit more details on how they're used. One of the other question, I think that's my original question, which is a little bit more fundamental about the consumer's definition and where they're supposed to be defined and what kind of guarantees should they provide, or are they part of a bigger thing? Or because here it seems like from this cap there's just like we're dropped with a list, but we don't really know where it's coming from. Even if this doesn't really address it, I think it'd be good to have a little bit more than just like this line. It'd be a guidance on how the what should make a consumer and what are overall the reach of those, and what are the expectations. And maybe that's just adding more to this here. Or maybe it's giving like a consumer should be defined, blah, 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 blah. They should have, I mean, they have access, they read from a certain inventory, they have access to the clusters, they are defined in some authoritative places that does give them, that records what permission they should have, and that authoritative places will be the one creating those credentials. And something like that. It doesn't have to be an API that's defined, but.
Do we have anything similar to this in other Kubernetes objects? My problem partly is that I don't get how it works, what it does, how we enforce it, etc. So, and if we have a lot of questions about this, I guess our users will get even more confused when they see this.
Right, and I think. Oh, Laura, go ahead, please.
Oh, just yeah, I agree that some more definition around this is useful and would help with clarity. I agree that it doesn't need to be like I'm reminded of there's a section in the MCS API that has definitions, including for the MCS controller, which is like it could be like this, or it could be like a person running kubectl. Like the variation of what those things could be a lot more than I think. Like it doesn't need to be super like it's definitely like this, but I think some explanation of the varieties or like what our expectations of what that persona is like encoded in here, not necessarily as like an API. It's not like a code thing, but it's like as a definition generally probably would go a long way towards understanding. And I think because this is an API, even more so I feel than the MCS API, that's like very like being very hands off of like what that consumer and what that provider like super exactly looks like, and trying to come to like the most minimal agreement in the middle of what they can agree on so that people can work together. Those things could work together, but they could still individually be very different. I think having those softer boundary points, I guess, defined at least to the limits of our expectations in writing is going to help a lot. So yeah, just +1 on those things.
I completely agree, Laura. So, and going on that point as well, do we need the so there was another comment about the enforcement and namespace, and I think it's sort of tied back to this comment as well. Do we need this consumer to this field at all? Because the cluster profile is namespace scope. Like can we? I mean, I don't want to repeat this whole argument or discussion again, but if this namespace is for this particular consumer, then we can sort of just leave it as keep that simple, right? Like, and that allows also provide that security that namespace sort of provides, because in this namespace this particular cluster profile represents this credential, then that consumer uses this namespace, and then we don't have to worry about this list that is kind of tricky to maintain. Right? It's hard to have a global list. And then I mentioned that it might be varies per cluster profile as well, because maybe some cluster wants the consumer to have these access and some cluster doesn't. So it's not even all in sync, even if they're in the same namespace, the way that we have it defined right now. So maybe the easier thing is just to have it leverage the namespace scope so that it's only one credential per cluster profile to start with. Ryan, I see that you have joined. Like, what do you think? Do you have any comments?
Just to clarify, are you saying that we're going to create one cluster profile per customer instead of putting them together? Is that what you're suggesting?
If we need to leverage different credential per consumers, if there's such need for the consumer, maybe we might have to do that. I'm just throwing the idea out there. I haven't fully think of it. It was just off the top of my head as we were reading this, and
I don't think it was about a different cluster profile.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, maybe I also misunderstood what you were saying, but I think what you were saying was that the consumer name field may not be as necessary. Is that what you were implying, Mike?
yes, but if we get rid of the name, then how do we distinct the different ones?
Yeah.
We give it the I guess there's the name of the credential, I guess. But yeah. Oh, Jack, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I don't think this is, I think we're mostly talking about API ergonomics at this point, but I am curious, is this something that SIG should be involved in at some point? Is now the appropriate time to get their sign off, or do we not have to worry about SIG auth?
SIG is definitely relevant because this is a very similar problem to what Gateway API has with secrets. And I know Rob Scott's been working with Mo, I believe, in SIG about trying to improve some of the RBAC story around controller access to secrets. So would definitely reach out to the two of them at the very least.
So is there a case to be made for tagging them in terms of a label on this PR to get their, I'm not trying to slow anything down if it sounds like that, but maybe it'll help with overall consensus objectives to get SIG buy-in or recommendations.
Yeah, I don't think it's like a blocking concern at this point. It's more of just making a use case that we have visible to them so that as they're working on improving that experience, they're aware of this need.
Cool. Mike and Ryan, did that sound sensible and or controversial?
No, I think it's it's more. I have a question more on the practical side. How do we get SIG auth involved? Are we going to just send the PR to their chat or invite them to our meeting? How do we go about that?
Great question. I'm not sure there's one particular way, but this probably the most common pattern would be to get our house in order with a definite proposal and then set an agenda item on their weekly and or bi-weekly agenda and go and present this to them and solicit any concerns or that kind of thing. Does that make sense? Does anybody else have any better ideas?
We can also reach out directly to Mo and Rob prior to presenting in a public meeting, just to give a heads up.
Cool. And since a lot of folks have spoken up about this, I would say if we do go to SIG auth, paste that into the SIG multi-cluster Slack so that, you know, if Babak, you want to go, or Quarantine, we can have the stakeholders there.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, one of us can check with those folks. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Is that the end of our agenda for today?
Yeah, I was just going to ask if it's clear what the next steps are on KEP 4322.
It sounds like more discussion needs to happen on Slack
Yeah.
between us plus SIG auth. Those are the two action items. It sounds like to me.
Yeah, that's why I thought as well. Okay, thanks. And yeah, we've reached the end of our agenda.
Also, thanks, Stephen, for taking a look at the service import stuff. I've been a little stuck on figuring out kubecrd versioning stuff of how to safely upgrade without blocking or breaking things. So
Yeah.
appreciate your help on that, and hopefully I can get that wrapped up soon.
Yeah. Yeah, for people who are not aware, so Mike's got a PR open to define V1 Alpha 2. And so it turns out, well, in the previous call, or one of the previous calls, we thought, or at least I thought, that we could have a V1 Alpha, stick with V1 Alpha 1 service export and only have a V1 Alpha 2 service import. But because both types are defined in the same package, we can't. And
All right.
yeah, and then there's a bunch of stuff that needs to be done. This is just for context for other people, right, Mike? I guess you're aware of this. There's a bunch of stuff that needs to be done because the build infrastructure only knows about V1 Alpha 1. So we need to add V1 Alpha 2 to generate both sets of code all the time. And then there's a bit of a gotcha with the storage version that needs to be updated. And so there's some kube builder magic that happens.
It is way too complicated to make changes to CRDs, whether you want them to be seamlessly not breaking or whether you want to break them. It's too complicated either direction.
Yeah.
So thanks, appreciate the help with that.
You're welcome. Right, so if nobody else has anything last minute for the agenda, we can break up early. See you all in 2 weeks' time.
See
Have a
you.
good rest of the week.
Thank
Take care.
you.
Bye, all.
Yeah. Bye.
Thanks, Stephen.
You're welcome.